All right, so you've got your solar panels, maybe even a battery. For many Aussies, the logical next step is a hot water heat pump. And if you live anywhere in Australia south of Brisbane, they're hands down the most efficient way to heat your water and a great way to kick any remaining electricity or gas bills to the curb. In this video, I'll explain how hot water heat pumps work, what they cost and what the government kicks in, what brands are worth your money, the key differences between good budget heat pumps and top-end models, how to spot common installation mistakes that even the pros make, the most important maintenance trick to add years to your heat pump's life, and how to integrate it with solar and/or batteries but not run out of hot water, even with shower-hungry teenagers. How do heat pumps work? Heat pumps work thanks to a special fluid called refrigerant, which absorbs heat easily. And I mean easily. Look at the boiling points of the three main refrigerants used in hot water heat pumps. Carbon dioxide boils at -25 degrees Celsius, propane gas, which boils at -10 degrees Celsius, and tetrafluoromethane, aka the really nasty shit found in cheap heat pumps, boils at -1 degree Celsius. So, unless it gets below -25 where you live in Australia, the refrigerant in a CO2 heat pump will still absorb so much heat that it will literally boil. That means a good heat pump will work just fine through any Australian winter, although its efficiency will be lower in cold temperatures. The refrigerant, which has absorbed heat from the ambient air, boils into a gas and is then squeezed by a compressor, which makes it even hotter, hot enough to heat your water. When you compress a gas, the gas gets hotter. To see that in action, you just need to vigorously pump up your bike tire and then feel the valve. Yep, that's warm. This hot, compressed refrigerant gas is pumped through copper pipes in your water tank, transferring the heat to the water. The water gets hotter, the refrigerant gets colder, and the whole process starts again. It's just moving heat from the air into your water. Because it's mostly moving heat rather than creating heat, it uses way less energy than heating the water with a big element that glows red hot, like a conventional water heater or burning gas. How much do heat pumps cost? For a good budget brand with propane refrigerant, like this iStore, expect to pay about $3,000. Want something a bit fancier? A premium model with high pressure carbon dioxide refrigerant, like this Reclaim, which is what I own, will cost you closer to $5,000. These prices assume a straightforward install. If you need to pour a slab to mount it on, or do extra electrical or plumbing work, costs can increase. Now, you might see some deals out there advertising heat pumps for under $2,000.
G'day, I'm Dave, the hot pumper specialist. You want the cheapest hot pumps in town? You know where to come, just ask for Dave and you will get the cheapest hot pump you'll ever see. Remember, ask for Dave.
Let me be straight with you. I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. These cheap units are the reason why some plumbers roll their eyes when you even mention heat pumps. They're noisy as hell, chew through power, use nasty refrigerants, and I've heard horror stories about their reliability. But don't let the cheap rubbish put you off. A quality heat pump like this one is quiet. This one's been running the whole time we've been filming, efficient, uses environmentally friendly refrigerants, you're welcome, Greta, and will reliably pump out hot water for years to come. Let's talk about which heat pumps are worth considering in Australia. I've done the homework and dug through all the online reviews, but I've only looked at models which have at least 15 real customer reviews on productreview.com.au, because there's no point getting excited about a heat pump with only 2 reviews from the manufacturer's cousins, right? The crowd favourites on the far right are Haier and iStore, leading the pack with 4.9 stars out of 5, with iStore being lower down the y-axis because it's a fair bit cheaper than the Haier. Then there's my heat pump, the Reclaim. These guys use fancy carbon dioxide refrigerant, they're super efficient, have great reviews, and they're whisper quiet. Will you be quiet? I'm trying to listen to my heat pump. But as you can see from their position on their chart, they're about £2 more expensive than the cheaper iStore unit. Now, I put a reclaim on my own house about 3 years back, and it hasn't missed a beat. But, and it's a big but, they are one of the most expensive units on the market. So is it worth shelling out for an expensive unit like the reclaim, or should you save a few $1,000 and get something like this iStore? That's the $2,000 question, and I'll answer it later. But first, I should point out that there are plenty of hot water heat pumps on the Australian market these days, and I've put together my own chart of brands I'd personally be happy recommending to a friend. Let's talk heat pump rebates. Well, technically, we're not supposed to call them rebates. The government gets the knickers in a twist about that one. What we're actually talking about is STCs, small-scale technology certificates, the same things that make solar panels cheaper. All you need to know is they can knock about $750 off the price of your heat pump. Any decent heat pump with a tank under 425 litres can claim these STC certificates, and installers almost always include the STC discount in their final quoted price. But if you want to check exactly how many STCs you'll get for different heat pumps, jump on my website and use my hot water heat pump STC calculator. It'll crunch the numbers for you. On top of STCs, which is a federal thing, there are also extra state level incentives you can claim. Some of them are more generous than others. If you're in Victoria, you're laughing. Upgrading from gas, that's about $500 off. But if you're upgrading from electric, you could get around $1,200 off. New South Wales isn't far behind. You can get about $300 off upgrading from gas and up to $670 upgrading your electric hot water. South Australia will kick in up to $850 if you use this as an opportunity to ditch your gas meter entirely. In ACT, Actu AGL will give you $1,250 off your heat pump plus a $250 power bill credit if you buy a heat pump. If you're in Queensland, WA, NT or Tassie, bad news, no rebates right now. But Tassie folks can grab an interest-free loan up to $10,000 to buy a heat pump. Let me break down what makes a good heat pump. First up, efficiency. The really crappy heat pumps have a real-world efficiency close to 100%, about the same as your kettle. Avoid. Good budget heat pumps like this iStore claim an average efficiency of 350 to 400%. The expensive ones like this Reclaim or the slightly less well-reviewed Sandon claim 500% efficiency. But how does this affect your bill? Expect the good budget units to use about 1 kilowatt hour of extra electricity every single day. That's about $100 on your bill if you're pulling it from the grid, and maybe $30 a year in lost feed-in tariffs if you're solar powered. If you're paying $2,000 extra for a top-of-the-range unit, that's a 20-year plus payback on those extra dollars. Your call. Next, heating speed. Reheating the tank takes from 3 to 5 hours depending on the unit. If you've got solar panels, you really want that water to reheat during the peak sun hours, the 4 hours from 11 o'clock to 3 p.m. So 5 hours is just too long if you ask me. The iStore takes 4 hours, whilst my Reclaim takes just 3. Nice. What about noise? Well, let's listen. Here's the Reclaim compressor when it's running. And this is the iStore. And to my rave-ravaged ears, it does sound a little bit louder. Now, let's talk about tank size. Size rarely matters. Most families should go for a 270 to 350 litre tank. If you're living solo or with your partner, 150 litres should do you fine. But if you've got a big family of 6 or more, do not go smaller than 315 litres. The biggest you can get for your house at the moment is 400 litres. This is what a 315 litre tank looks like, with the separate compressor. Units with a separate compressor are typically more efficient, heat faster, and run quieter. But all-in-one units, like this 270 litre iStore, take up less space, need less pipe work, and are easier to install. Warranty-wise, you want at least 5 years on the compressor and at least 10 years on the tank. Reclaim's currently leading the pack with 10 years on the whole system. Nice one, Reclaim. I've already touched on refrigerants, but it's worth repeating here that there are 3 main refrigerants used in Aussie hot water heat pumps. First up is R134A, aka tetrafluoroethane, or something like that. It's terrible for the environment and the mark of a cheap unit. Avoid that refrigerant. Then you've got propane, or R290. which is now used by all iStores and other good budget units. It's pretty good for the environment, and yes, it is flammable, but if you've got a well-installed unit like this, the fire risk is tiny. The best refrigerant is carbon dioxide, R744, used by high-end units like this Reclaim. It's the most efficient and the most environmentally friendly, but because it runs at higher pressures, it requires more expensive hardware. So let's sum up the differences between expensive and good budget heat pumps. Efficiency. The expensive units are typically 20 to 25% more efficient, saving $30 to $100 per year in electricity compared to a good budget unit. Noise. The top-end units are a little bit quieter, no doubt, but I reckon you'd need very sensitive ears to be bothered by the difference. Heating speed. If you want to reheat your tank in 3 hours rather than 4, you need to pay more for the top-end units. What about size? Most brands come in different tank sizes. Go big if you have a family. The budget-friendly all-in-one units certainly take up less floor space, obviously. Warranty. You can get a 10-year tank warranty even on the cheaper systems, but if you want 10 years warranty on the compressor, you need to get the more expensive Reclaim. And finally, refrigerant again. The good budget units use propane, but if you want the refrigerant that's most environmentally friendly and works at the lowest outdoor temperatures, you need to pay more for the top-end systems that use a high-pressure carbon dioxide refrigerant. Heat pump installation. Like most things in Australia, heat pump installation must follow strict rules. I won't bore you with all the standards, your installer needs to know those, but there are a few key things to understand. First up, pipe insulation. It's not exactly exciting, but a badly insulated install can lose heat twice as fast as a properly insulated one. And it's easy for the layperson to spot a poorly insulated install, so listen up. The Australian standard, that's ASNZ 3500.4 for the nerds out there, is crystal clear about this.
All hot water pipes, fittings and valves must be insulated.
This is pretty good, apart from this small gap in the insulation here. Now the first 300 millimeters of any hot drain line like this should be insulated. This is pretty good, again, apart from this small gap in the insulation here. Every relief valve stuck directly on your tank must be insulated. The iStore insulation here is good, my Reclaim, not good. One way to totally insulate the valve is this $30 thing called a valve cozy. Want to spot a quality install? Look for neat, complete insulation with no gaps. Another thing, some insulation lasts better in the Australian sun than others. My insulation is not even 3 years old and has been battered by the sun. I'll be looking to replace it soon, and that's not ideal. If I did it again, I'd personally insist on foil-covered insulation like this to better protect it from the sun. All heat pump hot water systems need a drain for condensate and overflow. A telltale sign of a crappy installation is draining onto the ground. That's a complete no-no and it's non-compliant. All drains must go into a, you guessed it, drain. And it must be obvious to the homeowner if the drain is operating, because a continuously draining system is a problem that needs to be fixed as soon as possible. Now, if your drain can't go into a drain in the ground and has to go directly into a drain line, the plumbing code says you need an air gap. But do be careful, because watch what happens when I operate the pressure relief valve. Water everywhere, and even worse, it's going all over this electric AC isolator. Obviously, that's not ideal. A drain which directs water onto electrical equipment or even your face, yes, I have seen that, is not compliant. It should always be down and into a proper drain. And that brings me to the electrics. A heat pump install involves both an electrician and a plumber. The electrician is needed to provide a dedicated supply to your heat pump. It's okay to plug the controller of the heat pump into a regular socket, but the supply for the compressor always needs a dedicated hardwired connection back to your switchboard. Now, if your switchboard is fairly close to your heat pump, like on this house, that's a fairly easy job. If your switchboard is over the other side of the house, like at my house, the electrical connection can be expensive. We had to go up over the roof in conduit the whole way and then back down again. That took hours of dedicated labor. Now, because heat pumps are 80% plumbing and 20% electrics, sometimes the electrics is a bit of an afterthought and you can end up with wires hanging and looking a bit rubbish like this. So don't be afraid to ask your electrician to tidy up loose cables. All heat pump cylinders that aren't stainless steel have a sacrificial anode. They're designed to corrode instead of the tank, taking one for the team. If you don't replace the sacrificial anode, as specified by the manufacturer, then your tank will almost certainly fail early and you will void your warranty. Typically, you need to organize anode replacement every 3 to 5 years. Ideally, your installer will ping you when it's necessary, but let's just say some installers are more organized than others. My advice is to take responsibility for yourself. Hey Siri, remind me to replace my sacrificial anode in 3 years.
Sure, Wolfin, if I'm not AI-ed out of existence by then.
Now, expect an anode replacement to cost $200 to $300, including labor. Which brings me on to my final installation mistake that I see so many installers make. Installing your heat pump so that anode replacement is almost impossible or just really, really difficult. Standalone cylinders like this usually have the anode hole at the top, right here. Now, if you haven't got a ladder, just ask your plumber if you can stand on his wallet. The problem is that these anodes are about 1.5 meters long, and the cylinders are often installed under eaves that are less than 1.5 meters above the top of the tank. So replacing your anode becomes a right royal pain in the bum. If you must install your tank under an eave, ask for a flexible anode to be fitted from the outset. On an integrated heat pump, the anode goes in from the side. Now you've got to get at this hole and then you've got to pull the anode out, but obviously the plumber's put this pipe in the way. That's not good. Now for the exciting bit. Let's have a look at my sacrificial anode. This is about a 3-year-old system and I've never removed the anode before, so I'm pretty excited. If you don't know what you're doing here, you can get a plumber to do this, no problem at all. First thing to do, isolate the cold water supply to the tank using this isolation valve. Next thing to do is release the pressure release valve, and that's going to remove the pressure from the tank, so when you pull the anode out, you don't get squirted with a face full of hot water. All right, so I'm confident there's no water coming out, I'm confident there's no pressure in there. Now, I'm going to get a ladder so I can get to the top of the tank and I can find the anode and unscrew it.
Doesn't look too bad for just under 3 years old. I'll wait until 5 years to replace it.
What I love about heat pumps is they're perfect for solar. They draw less than 1,000 watts, and that's easily powered by most solar systems, even through winter. They're like a battery. They use your solar to heat your water during the day, so you can use it at night. Now, don't overthink your heat pump control. Just use the simple timer that came with your heat pump. Set it on at 11 AM and you'll be laughing. Your water will be hot by early afternoon, mostly powered by your solar panels, unless it's properly overcast. Now, let me share a bit of personal experience here. When I got this 315-litre heat pump, I put it on a timer. Then reality hit. My teenagers and their 45-minute midnight showers. Every night, they'd empty the tank, leaving no hot water for the morning. I ended up ditching the timer and just letting it heat whenever needed. Luckily, I've got a Tesla Powerwall which stores 13.5 kilowatt hours of electricity, so 2 to 3 kilowatt hours nighttime hot water top-ups are not a drama. But here's my advice. Start with the timer. If you find yourself running cold, you've got options. 1, let it heat during the day on solar and top it up overnight on cheap rates. Under 20 cents per kilowatt hours, we're talking 50 cents a night max. Or secondly, do what I should have done. Teach your kids about bloody hot water conservation. So I want you to remember one thing. Long showers bad. Short showers good. Is that okay? Hello?
Shut up, you're not even my real dad.
So let's wrap up with the stuff you really need to remember about buying a heat pump. First up, don't be tempted by those super cheap deals. You know what they say about things that seem too good to be true? Yeah, that. Really cheap heat pumps are a nightmare. Noisy, inefficient, unreliable. They're why your plumber hates heat pumps. The government will chip in via STCs to help with the cost, and depending on where you live, your state might throw in some extra cash too. A good heat pump will be pretty quiet, between a ceiling fan and a fridge. That's 37 to 50 decibels if you're counting. Warranty-wise, do not settle for less than 5 years on the heat pump bits and 10 years on the tank. If you want the fastest heating, quietest, most efficient heat pump with environmentally friendly carbon dioxide refrigerant and a 10-year compressor warranty, then a top-end heat pump is for you. A good budget unit like this iStore will do the job just fine if you want to be a bit more careful with your cash. Just avoid the really cheap ones.